Good morning, everyone. In today's lesson, we're going to go on talking about the Second United Front. Last class, we focused on why and how did the CCP and the Kuomintang form the Second United Front. So, in this class, we'll talk about their performance during the Second United Front. Last class, we talked about the appealing manifesto Together We Confront the National Crisis, which was issued in July 1937, which was after the Xi'an incident. But you need to see that the July of 1937 is important also because it was a new wave of invasion from Japan. On 7th of July 1937, or the double 7th, a relatively minor clash between Chinese and Japanese troops occurred at the Marco Polo Bridge. The confrontation had been deliberately planned by the Japanese to create trouble. Using the clash as a pretext, Japan demanded that in order to prevent further trouble, the Kuomintang government should yield every greater authority to the occupying forces in China. But on this occasion, since it was already after the Xi'an incident, after they already formed the Second United Front, on this occasion, Chiang Kai-shek refused to make concessions. He declared to the Chinese people that their country was now in a state of total war against Japan. He said, if we allow 1 inch more of our territory to be lost, we shall be guilty of an unpardonable crime against our race. This was very much in the spirit of the 1936 Xi'an Incident Agreement. It seemed that Chiang Kai-shek was totally committed to his agreement in Xi'an and started to lead the United Front in a genuine resistance to occupation. But you have to see that his resolve was the opposite to what he said here. Throughout the 8 years of the Sino-Japanese War, Chiang Kai-shek's principal aim remained the defeat of the communists. And this kind of victory over Japan, or the resistance over Japan, was a means of that end. So here you need to see at the same time, to eliminate the CCP is still my ultimate goal. So apparently, this alliance, like the first time the First United Front, was ill-fated. Throughout the remainder of the Sino-Japanese War, the Kuomintang-CCP conflict was never resolved. Officially, despite Chiang Kai-shek's basic wish to destroy the Communist Party, the Nationalists and Communists formed a united front against the Japanese. However, in most cases, they fought as separate armies, and although they did liaise on occasion, their distrust of each other meant they really acted as a combined force. So, by 1938, Beijing, Shanghai, Guangzhou, Nanjing had all fallen to Japan. Disasters which obliged the Kuomintang government to withdraw their capital west up the Yangtze River to Chongqing. So you have to see one important reason to explain this kind of poor performance was because Chiang Kai-shek, he was not full-hearted. He still wanted to eliminate Communist Party instead of focus all his heart in solving the Japanese attack. Even quote from Joseph Stilwell, who was the U.S. Chief of Southeast Asia Command and one of Chiang's sharpest critics. From this picture, you may find they seem to have a close relationship, but Joseph Stilwell complained actually a lot on the nationalists. He said he observed that compared to the CCP's struggle against Japan, the Kuomintang's resistance was half-hearted and ineffective. Invaluable American resources were being wasted on the nationalists. He said, I judge Kuomintang and CCP by what I saw. Kuomintang corruption, neglect, chaos, economy, taxes, words and deed, hoarding, black market trading with the enemy. While on the other side, for the communist program, to reduce taxes, rents, interest, and raise production and standard of living, participate in government, practice what they preach. I won't say his words are 100% objective or true. He was replaced by the US government after this to avoid conflict, but it did reflect the slowness and incompetence of Chiang Kai-shek in resisting Japan during the Second Sino-Japanese War. Because you have to know, the nationalists were not fighting alone, not only with their united front with communists, more importantly, at that time, Chiang Kai-shek obtained huge support from the US. It is said that 8th of December 1941 was the happiest day of Chiang Kai-shek's life. After the US joined the Allied powers in the Second World War, the Americans anxious to use China principally as a means of defeating Japan and accept Chiang Kai-shek and the Kuomintang as the real force in China who deserved their full support. So America's entry gave a tremendous political as well as military boost to Chiang Kai-shek as the Chinese leader. By 1945, the USA had invested over $1 billion in China after the Pearl Harbor incident. But the half-hearted and ineffectiveness of the Nationalist Party was again proven in the Ichiko offensive in 1944 by Japan, which was the largest campaign undertaken in China by the Japanese. In this campaign, the Kuomintang army were unable to to stop the advance which carried Japanese forces deep into the southern China. Ichigo means number one in English. That means this is a number one operation. That means it's a very important operation during the Second World War. And the brilliantly executed campaign showed what a powerful military force Japan remained even in 1944. This paragraph is quoted from the book China at War, Triumph and Tragedy in the Emergence of the New China. You can see how they describe nationalist condition under the Ichiko plan, right? The Ichiko forces slashed through the nationalist armies as if they did not exist, clearing them from the province of Henan, Hunan, and Guangxi. And by October, Sichuan was the only large Chinese province still in nationalist hands. So Ichigo was beneficial to the communists and it was disastrous for the nationalists. So you can see in the Ichiko operation, actually, nationalists were in like a terrible situation. But what eventually saved the Kuomintang force was not the quality of their resistance, but the curtailing of Japan's war effort in China. Because in Ichigo operation, Japan put so many resources, that means money and troops, and also all the facilities in China. It made their troops back to Japan comparatively weak, and the Japan mainland fell under increased Allied attacks from 1944 onwards. The climax of the aerial onslaught came with the atomic bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, while Japan had finally been defeated after 15 years of struggle. They surrendered in August 1945. But before we talk about the settlement of the war and its impact on China, I think there is another question that we need to clarify. When we talk about how half-hearted of Kuomintang and about the comment from Joseph Stilwell, we can also see another side of it. While he make a great compliment on the communist program, right? So why Joseph Stilwell have such a good impression, since the US has already chosen Chiang Kai-shek to be the leader of China and who can have full access to the resources and support from the US? So we can also go back to this question that we mentioned last class. right? No policy of Mao's was responsible for his ultimate success than that of the Second United Front in the context of the resistance war. So let's find out what Mao Zedong did in this Second United Front and in the resistance war to make it so important for him for his ultimate success. Firstly, we may conclude the following three purposes of the CCP in forming this kind of united front with Kuomintang. Firstly, a means to carry out the orders of the Comintern after their strategic congress, right? They asked all the communist party in different countries to join the Grand Alliance, right? Secondly, to be freed from nationalist attacks after so many years of encirclement campaign. They're also tired of these wars and to build up strength during the war. So they regard this kind of resistance war as a important period for them for self-strengthening and self-expansion. But which policy do you think has the first priority of the above purpose? You need to see that Mao has made it very clear that the temporary cooperation with Kuomintang was not a betrayal of one's principles, because in their appealing manifesto you can see it's about fulfilling Sun Yat-sen, it's about joining the national army, right? But there was actually not a betrayal of their principles, not a surrender to the enemy, but a realistic way to heal the battle fatigue, strength for the future. He said, our fixed policy should be 70% expansion. Expansion means self-expansion. That means self-strengthening in the party. 20% dealing with Kuomintang and 10% resisting Japan. So I think it's obvious that the first priority should be to build up strength during the war, right? And the second priority was dealing with the Kuomintang. That means stay peace with Kuomintang so that they have space for them to strengthen themselves, to build up their strength, right? Last but not the least is to resist Japan. It was still important because wars could trigger nationalism, right? Which can unite people together to resist Japan. But of course for him, he needed it when people they united together and joined him so he can build up strength of the party during the time. So obviously, is also to build up strength during the war. So we can make a conclusion that one important purpose was to strengthen the power of CCP. And also based on this purpose, he designed what we call a three-stage strategy. Firstly, they need to achieve the compromise with the Kuomintang in order to safeguard the existence of CCP. Actually, it's about the formation of the Second United Front. They already achieved this stage, right? And then to struggle for parity with the Kuomintang. That means they still need to keep their independence within this kind of united front. Last but not the least, infiltrate into central China and build up a new base, which is the Yanan base, right? From which to launch a counterattack and seize the supreme power of the state. So you can see actually the purpose of Mao Zedong was very obvious. After the Long March, the CCP built their base in Yanan, and their years of efforts in self-strengthening was called the Yanan experience. The Yanan period of wartime resistance from 1937 to 1945 provided Mao and the CCP with the much needed time to restructure the party and the army, organize the masses. Masses means the peasants and the majority of people, and develop new social, political, and economic institutions. More importantly, Mao was freed from the Moscow-trained Chinese Communist internal dissension. That means all those Politburo members, right? He finally was able to carry out his own strategy and develop his own work style. The heart of the Yanan experience was, firstly, the perfection of the mass line. The mass here also means the majority, the people, the citizen, the proletariat, right? So the mass line means the basic line that we are following, this kind of like the majority's ideas. We are working, we are serving the masses, the proletariat, the people. And the second part is sharpening of the revolutionary nationalism in the countryside. These 2 points finally became the 2 pillars. That means the 2 most important theory of Maoism. So firstly, for the perfection of the mass line, Mao vigorously addressed himself to the needs of the peasants. Because this is the mass line, right? Carry out the land reform and rent reduction programs. For the second point, the sharpening of the revolutionary nationalism in the countryside, Mao brought the peasants into full participation in the political, economic, and military organizations in the base area. And also, you want to make use of the Japanese War because it gives new impetus, that means the new driven force to the revolutionary nationalism, to unite the people together. So you may see what Mao was doing here. He was trying to solve this problem that Chinese peasants were not revolutionary enough. Why feudalism has kept its dominant position in China for so many years, hundreds, thousands of years? It was mainly because China was an agricultural-based economy, right? Most of us were peasants. Even during that time, the modernization of China is still very slow and at its very early age, since most of the people, they were peasants, more than 80% of people, they were peasants, right? So for the peasants, they need to work day and night to look after their farmlands, to feed themselves and pay taxes, right? So even though sometimes the landlords or the emperor, they greatly exploited us, they treat us terribly, we still used to choose to tolerate so that to seek for survival. So our peasants were not revolutionary enough. Even though they were bullied, they would say nothing, right? What Mao was doing under this idea was to empower the peasants, to brought them into full participation in the political, economic, and military organizations in the base area. For example, they practiced universal, direct, and equal suffrage by secret ballot, to let these peasants know that their ideas matter and they have the every reason to do what they want and have what they deserve. So by class conflicts or revolution like in Soviet Union, how their peasants and workers won the Bolshevik Revolution and built the first communist country in history. In another word, what Mao was trying to do here is to activate the inexperienced peasantry and sharpen their class consciousness and also force them to shed their traditional timidity. Or we can say to increase their self-esteem and self-image, to give them confidence to fight for what they deserve. We can quote from Mao Zedong that he said, all men could transcend the limitation of class, experience, and ideology to act creatively in building a new China. Hence, this kind of 2 pillars also forged a close link between the leaders and the people. So you can see like Mao Zedong is like always very popular and have huge support from all the peasants, especially in his Yanan bases. And this kind of a Yanan experience was planted the seed of Mao's ultimate success. But you have to see self-strengthening was not only about revolutionize the peasantry. He also needed a team of people to lead the peasants, right? And also the revolutionaries. So build a reliable team in the party was also very important. As a result, he started the Yanan Rectification movement in 1942. You can see here Mao Zedong gave a speech in the Yanan's Rectification movement. In this movement, they focused on several things. For example, Here, firstly, Mao Zedong led the large-scale political movements within the party. The members, they went through ideological education. Firstly, they should get informed. They should know like what they were following, all the like principles of their leading, the basic principles of their identities as a communist member. And this kind of rectification movement actually successfully established Mao's leading position in the party's central committee. Everybody like listened to him, right? In 1945, Mao sought work officially. That means with the practice in Yanan, with different practice, no matter his interaction with the peasants or his position within the party make him very important. And also this is a time when he start to form his own idea. At old time we first have Marxism, right, and then we have Marxism, Leninism. Now we finally have the Maoism, which has the two pillars under here, the mass line and also the revolutionary peasantry, right? So Maoist thoughts, that means the Maoism, were officially incorporated into the constitution of the Communist Party of China. That means not only that he is in a very like privileged position, also his ideas and thoughts become like the rationale and the principle for the Communist Party. So if we go back here, you can see that Joseph Stilwell here was actually complementing Mao's Yanan experience, right? And also, for this question, the Second United Front was important because it proved a period of time for Mao's self-expansion in Yanan, while on the other side, the resistance war exhausted the nationalists a lot. For example, the Ichigo operation, right? So next class, we are going to focus on the aftermath of the Japanese War, the Chinese Civil War, and the establishment of PRC in 1949. Hope we can finish this chapter soon and start our next topic. See you in the next video.